This is not the video that I was supposed to shoot today, but I'm super excited to shoot it because today we have the 8BitDo Ultimate Mobile Gaming Controller. I wanted this for so long. I feel like I manifested it into space. I left so many hints. Sometimes there weren't hints at all. So for 8BitDo to finally tackle this market, I'm super excited to see what they're bringing to the space. So let's talk about it. Hi, I'm Clef and you're watching Game Tech Talk. Full disclaimer, this product has been sent for review. All opinions are my own and they get to see the video at the same time as everybody else. So let's not waste a second more and open the controller. Manual, branded 8BitDo USB-A to USB-C cable. Not braided, but very, very flexible. And then the rest of the box is actually glued, nothing else inside. This is very much literally if you took one of those and you split it in two. Of course, there are some differences to fit the format. You have definitely a more vertically aligned stick and set of D-pad and buttons versus the 2C, for example, well, the Ultimate Collection, that is. And then I guess you don't really have the capture button on this one, but you do have a button which I would assume will be used for turbo, mapping, these kinds of things. Right, so in terms of the sticks, if you have owned the 2C, the Ultimate, or the C, you know exactly what you're looking at. The buttons feel the same, the sticks feel identical. The D-pad is very much like the one from 2C, which changed from their previous models. However, I will say the feel of the tactile module that they're using on the mobile one is, at least in my opinion, it feels better. And I guess the D-pad is also smaller in comparison. Sound test for you guys. So that will be the mobile one. And that's the 2C. They're both very silent. You hear it a little more in the mobile one, not a whole lot, and I do find that it feels better. When it comes to the membrane buttons, this is the mobile one, and this is the 2C. Although they sound different, they don't feel different, so I would assume that the sound difference is more from just the shell inside and the space that is in there, because in terms of the feel, they feel identical. When it comes to the shoulder buttons, this is the mobile one, and this is the 2C. I would say the same. They have a slightly different shape, so that probably has an impact on sound, but in terms of feel, they're identical. And when it comes to the triggers, the one on the 2C definitely has more travel distance. This one has less, but in terms of the strength required to actuate them, they're the same. So this is really an ultimate telescopic controller. That's really what it comes down to. However, they retain the back buttons that you have from the ultimate 2.4 gigahertz model, so the non-C models. We have, of course, a telescopic mechanism. So to give you an idea, this is the iPad mini, and that wouldn't fit the iPad mini. So it's really constrained to phone only. Going off of the sound, I'm pretty sure that there's a coil system. I think it might be moddable, but it's not a guarantee, because even if it is a coil, there's a chance that there is still a ribbon cable. I'm gonna try to open it in time for this video.
It was at this moment that he knew. He f***ed up.
All right, so originally when I cracked it open, I was going to put portion where you see the ribbon cable at the very end after everything, you know, kind of to build up some dramatic ending, so to speak. But so by the way, the controller is safe and sound. Everything works now, both sides. And it was a difficult controller to open. That's why I figured out, you know what, before I even started editing, let me shoot this portion because I need to give people the heads up to not open this. It is very hard to split open to hopefully fit a tablet, and since there's a ribbon cable, it's not really feasible unless you get a longer ribbon cable, so outsourcing that might be a struggle. But once you open it, the ribbon cable comes undone on the other side of the controller, and that's where it gets complicated because you need to crack it open to reconnect the ribbon cable. So I'll tell you how I got it open, you know, in case this helps someone, but I would strongly encourage that you don't go that route. You need to remove the rubber backing. There are going to be 7 screws of 2 different types under that. And then in the back, when you extend it, there's 4 other screws. And once you got all those screws out, it's that portion. That's the one that is very hard to take out. And I was trying with those guitar pick to go around, and it wasn't enough. I had to use a metallic tool to get it out eventually. And once you do get it open, there are 2 T6 Torx screws that are underneath. I will credit 8BitDo on one thing. The plastic withstood a lot of prying and twisting, and you know, it came out pretty much as if I didn't open it. There's like a few little hints here and there that I did crack it open, but for the most part, it would be hard to tell. So I really got to commend 8BitDo on the quality of the plastic that they use, because take it from me, this thing just took some serious abuse. Once you got it open, the ribbon cable actually goes over the connector and is held by a little plastic tab that you need to undo, then connect the connector, put back the plastic tab. And then there was a tape. I don't know where the tape goes, but it was probably to hold the ribbon cable together, because right now the mechanism works, but it's not as smooth as it was. So the ribbon cable probably expands and it touches the plastic. So honestly, I think this controller has now an hourglass that is upside down. Eventually, as I open it back and forth, it's probably going to die. The ribbon cable is probably going to get slit or something like that. All in all, don't open it. It's not worth it. I don't recommend it. And if you open it, at least know what you're doing, because it's not going to be the easiest controller to put back together. All right, so that was for the modding portion. Minus and plus, your select and start are tactile, very low travel. So, you know, satisfying, pleasant function button. Same goes for the what would be the function and the home button. And same goes for the back tactile buttons as well. They're very low travel, very satisfying, very easy to click. Now, in terms of the stretch mechanism, it doesn't stretch a whole lot. I'll probably put on screen how much that it can actually stretch. You do have a rubber, what seems to be a fairly rigid rubber backing. Actually, it's not really soft, and it has a lot of different logos on it, which are basically the different buttons that you find on the controller. So it's a nice texture. You don't have audio channel. Of course, there's no USB-C because it is a Bluetooth controller primarily, but you do have a charging because there's a battery. So you have your cable on the top, which is unusual in this market. And then right next to it, you have the pairing button. In terms of the ergonomics, the Ultimate, of course, is a very nice feeling controller. A lot of people like that product line for the ergonomics. Yeah, I'm probably gonna make a couple of viewers go like, because I'm not a big fan of the ergonomics of the Ultimate line. I feel that 8BitDo had a better approach with their previous ones. That said, this one feels different. Now, of course, it kind of retained the same profile, the same DNA, but because the buttons are kind of compressed, compact together, it's different. And I know a lot of people will probably dislike the fact that it's more vertically aligned, but I will say for me personally, and what I believe a controller like this one would be mainly used for, I like that ergonomic better. I find that it works better for me. I prefer the way that I grip it. So this is a win in my personal opinion. I really like where they're going with this one. So here's what's interesting with the ergonomics with this. While it feels more like a console controller, because it is so compact, you could argue that it's somewhere between a small form factor and a large form factor. Kind of like a large form factor done small. And I think there's not a whole lot of controllers on the market that does this. And this is something, at least from the first impressions, that I really, really like with this controller. I think it feels really nice in the hands, but at the same time, I wonder if that's the reason why this controller does not have rumble, does not have gyro. And you know, the gyro sensor is a fairly small chip, so that probably shouldn't have much more of an impact. But the rumble motors, I feel like the size of the controller might be the reason why we don't have them. Just me thinking out loud here. Before we go any further, one question that a lot of people had with this controller is, will it work on iPhone? Because 8BitDo only listed it as Android. Unfortunately, it does not work on iPhones or iPads. It will connect. The problem is Apple does not introduce the drivers that this controller is using, because it's not spoofing as an Xbox controller, as a PlayStation controller, or as a Switch controller. It's really being an Android HID, so the input basically, and it's, you know, there's no spoof action happening here. It seems to work just fine on the Steam Deck. So let me just go ahead and boot a game to make sure that it does work. Indeed, so it does work wired. Linux probably doesn't have drivers for it, but I would assume that Steam does. So it does work for your games on the Steam Deck. That was wired, by the way. Let's test Bluetooth. When testing Bluetooth on desktop, it works, but it's really funky. So the left stick moves, but the right stick, like, it moves the axis, but not the stick itself. when hitting the triggers, it triggers a button, but there's also axis value. So it's a little all over the place on Bluetooth, but I mean, it works. And if a game that you're trying to play has mapping, technically you should be fine. So let's test on SteamOS. So on SteamOS, when on Bluetooth, it's working just fine. It's actually being received differently than when using wired. Contrary to PC, the trigger actually has graduality on the Steam Deck, so it might be something to do with my drivers on the PC. But yeah, it works fine. You can play your Steam Deck using your 8BitDo telescopic controller. So if you were here for the iPhone, I'm sorry to say, we're gonna have to wait for a future revision, and hopefully by then they will have a solution to work there. Or if they get MFI certified, which I'm pretty sure they have controllers that are MFI certified, so that could be a thing in the future. But if that's the thing, I would also expect that it's going to be a more expensive controller down the road. Right, so let's jump straight into Android and see what it looks like. Now, of course, when you want to, wow, that looks really nice. That looks very neat. That looks like it was designed to be put together. Wow, this is like the perfect fit with the Red Magic phone. Look at that. Tell me it doesn't look like I'm holding a handheld right now. That's awesome. Now, with the weight of a phone, it also feels extremely good. You know, it's very well proportioned. Again, ergonomics and feel is definitely a positive for this controller. So I'll go ahead and put the controller in pairing. So usually we want to hold this button, and let me just go ahead and hold it. Yeah, okay. So the operation is exactly like if you're familiar with 8BitDo controllers, you're gonna feel right at home here because it pretty much operates the exact same. So now let's go into the Ultimate software. Oh no. Oh no. Maybe the Ultimate software hasn't been updated yet, so I guess I'm not going to be able to cover that in that video. Right, so unfortunately, I did try another app, an older app. It just doesn't work for the time being. So I'm gonna see while I'm filming this video if I can get the app from maybe the PC version supports the controller. For the time being, I guess we're gonna have to make do with the controller. I hope I'm not filming this out of embargo because I was not given a date. So if it is the case, I apologize. Am I too early on this? I don't know right now. Anyways, let's start straight with Call of Duty Mobile. Because it is perceived as an Android HID controller, I have zero reasons to believe it's gonna work, but we'll see. We'll see. We'll give it a try. Controller settings, and unfortunately, it does not work. So yeah, that's just the reality of the way that Call of Duty Mobile operates. There's very few controllers that can work wired. Most controllers can work Bluetooth nowadays as long as they are officially recognized controllers. And by officially, I'm talking like a PlayStation controller, an Xbox. I don't even think the Switch controller works. So if there's no spoofing mode, we can pretty much forget about Call of Duty Mobile, unfortunately. All right, so it works. That's a good news. So far, at least with the default, I really like the inner radius of the stick. I know this is something that a lot of controllers, top controllers on the market, has this thing that a lot of people are not too keen with, is that they are very aggressive in the inner radius of your stick. Here, I can really do very small motions without any effort whatsoever. There's a little bit of a dead zone, not too much. I would say in the middle, I don't often talk about the middle, but from the middle and on, it ramps up very quickly, which I'm pretty sure this is Hall effect. I don't feel like I would get such an aggressive ramp on ALPS, but at least the inner dead zone is very, very good. This is something I find that this is oftentimes the issue with a lot of telescopic controllers. Well, a lot of controllers using Hall effect, to be honest, is the inner radius of your dead zone. The inner radius of your stick is just too aggressive. That is not the case here. That is not the problem here, is what I should say. So that's a good thing for sure. If I think of all the controllers that I tested, all the controllers that I own in the telescopic market, I would say that the sticks on these ones are pretty good. They're above average. I've had better. Recently, the ELO Vagabond that I just reviewed has fantastic sticks. It has amazing resolution. Here we have I'll put it on screen. We have a pretty standard resolution, so nothing special when it comes to that, but they do feel good. I like the way that they're calibrated, so that's definitely a positive for the controller overall. These are being recognized as gradual, so this is exactly what we want. You can have your graduality in your racing games. So what we want to do actually is hold the button that we want to put turbo on. We hold it, and then you hit the star once, and that gives you turbo. And until you deactivate it, it's going to keep it turbo. So you want to hold it, push it again, and then turbo is gone. If you want to have auto turbo, you want to hold the button and then you want to double tap, and that's going to have an auto turbo. And when you hold the key, it's actually going to stop pushing. To map your back paddle, you hold the back paddle, you push the button that you want to map, and then you hit the star, and then your button is doing the value that you just hit. Again, we hold the back button, we hold, for example, B, and then we push the star, and then it's going to move the back button value to B. If we want to try to do two buttons, so I'm going to do A, B, the back button, and then I'm going to push the star, it's not going to work. Essentially, you don't have any macro functions. You don't have double keys function. It's really just one key. And in terms of the keys, you can do your sticks. You can even do your start select. So that's nice. You cannot do stick value. Now, if you want, for example, if you mapped A and you want to cancel the key, you're going to hold the back button and you're going to push the star, and then it's gone. The home button and the stick value is not going to work, but your D-pad, your face buttons, your shoulders, like for example, the trigger here, I'm able to do the trigger. Of course, it's not going to do the graduality, but you can map the button just fine. So it's very easy, very simple to map your back buttons. Let's go ahead and try Street Fighter, but that one we're going to try on the fold. The case kind of makes it a bit hard, but you could have the vertical fashion as long as it's a fold. Of course, a regular phone would not have enough width. Now you do have lip at the bottom, so you're not able to, for example, put your screen right down the middle. It's always going to have to be over. I'm not enjoying, at least when flat like I am right now, I'm not enjoying the feel with fold, because the controller is so light that it really tips backwards. So I feel myself always holding, but if I go vertical like that, then it's absolutely fine. It's because it's a quite light controller, by the way. It's really just if I am flat like this, it's really tipping backwards, but otherwise it's just fine. Yeah, so it's a decent D-pad, not the best, not the most comfortable. It just feels more firm overall, and I guess as much as I prefer the Switch here, it does give, you feel the firmness when you push it down. No, you know what? I'm gonna go C+. Not, and the diagonals are not necessarily hard. I mean, it's not a bad D-pad. It's not an ideal D-pad for fighters, at least not in my opinion. I'm gonna leave it at C+. It's definitely a D-pad that is more pleasant for platformers than it is for just fighters in general. It has extremely low travel. I think that might be what's at cause here. It has so little travel, because sometimes there's so little travel that it's like sometimes it gets kind of stuck in the shell and it's not doing it. Like, I really have to exaggerate to hit the adjacent arrow. I need to push harder. Yeah, I like the feel for platformers, not so much for fighters personally. This is about the end of it. I did test performance. I'm gonna put the numbers on PC. For the most part, and oh yeah, and as you can see through the performance, it can be used wired. So if you plug it USB-C to USB-A or USB-C on another PC, it's gonna work just fine. It will give you a higher polling rate. It also seems to do better in terms of latency, just going by the joystick test that I did, which, by the way, it's not doing a circle. In terms of the joystick, we have what is kind of between a square and a circle, and when used wired, it operates under the exact same protocol, so there's no hidden mode, X input, or whatever. It remains a D input mode. The reality is, everything that I'm seeing with this controller, I expected. It was on the Amazon listing. We knew it was not going to work for iPhones. We knew it was not going to have rumble and gyro. I was pretty sure it was not going to be spoofed because it's not something we see a whole lot nowadays with 8BitDo controllers, which to me is kind of it's almost falling victim to the success that they've had these past few years, which I absolutely get. It does seem that they have created relationships with companies where it's like, well, if you spoof our controllers, we're gonna come after you. You know, like that bridge has been created. That's kind of what it feels like when it comes to 8BitDo. When looking at the price and when looking at my conclusion, I will keep the things that I have just mentioned in mind, because as much as there is a market that offers a lot more, if I'm being honest, I feel like it's no longer in the wheelhouse of 8BitDo as much as it once was. And if it is, and I'm completely off about this, I don't understand why they go about it the way that they do. I don't think that this is by choice. I think that this is just by the reality that they have found themselves in by being a very successful company in the controller market from years ago. Like they are pretty much one of the pioneers and the third-party controller, and I have loved their products for so long, and when I love something, I tell everyone around me about them. When looking at this controller, in all reality, is that the controller I would recommend for $50 USD? I'll be absolutely honest, no. It's not that it's a bad controller, it's a good controller, but the market has been so aggressive that there is better for less. There is considerably better for a smidge more. Honestly, if you get this product, and I would absolutely understand if you do, it is because you love the brand. And if that is the case, if you like to collect these things, if you like 8BitDo, I would encourage you to get one because it feels really good. And what I'm hoping really is that they see this market as something that they need to keep on tackling and to eventually be the 8BitDo that we have come to know them from years ago, where they innovate in the market space that they're in. This is not that product. To me, this is putting a foot in the door kind of product, and I welcome them for doing so. I am glad that this product exists. I'm excited to see what people have to say about it. I think it's a fine product. I don't think it's a groundbreaking product. It's not redefining the market. I think the two main reasons to want to get this is, one, because you know the ergonomics, you're familiar, and number two, the sticks are actually pretty good. I am probably gonna buy a second one if I'm being honest, and it sounds so counter to what I'm saying right now, but I'm probably gonna buy a second one because I want the white one. I'm so happy. I'm just happy that they're on the market. That's really what it comes down to. I hope their approach with it is, let's start there so that we can only go in this direction. I hope that's what they're thinking, right? Because we've seen a lot of companies do the opposite lately. Take, for example, Goalie Kid that came out with a KK3 Max and have since released a Pro and since a KK3. Like, they're going backwards than what a lot of people would expect in terms of just releasing new products, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just not a common thing. Hopefully 8BitDo is doing the opposite. They're following probably the blueprint that we're more familiar with, which is you start there and you can only go up from here. And if that's what they're doing, I'm so happy for this product. I really, really hope this is not a one-off. Now, I do expect down the road that we're probably going to see different colors because, you know, that's what 8BitDo does. And that's going to be interesting to see as well. Thank you very much, guys, for watching. As always, please consider doing all the YouTube things. Let me know what you think about the 8BitDo Ultimate Mobile Gamer Controller. Is that something you're going to buy for yourself? Were you waiting for that one? Are you excited that 8BitDo is finally entering the market? I want to know your opinions. Put it in the comment box. Let's talk about it. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.